allowed to use copyrighted content if you're creating fan content from something like a movie or a TV show or just something that someone else created? Let's talk to a lawyer to find out.
Young professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that is dedicated to all things intellectual property.
One of our YouTube followers wrote in this week off of a video that we recently talked about making sure that we are not infringing on other people's copyrights. And they asked specifically, can you create content that is kind of fan content based off of somebody else's work? So they're taking videos from movies or TV shows or somebody else's YouTube channel, and all they are doing is adding subtitles, they're zooming in and out, doing different pans. Does that qualify as being transformative enough to not infringe on their intellectual property and deal with a copyright infringement, Tony?
So first off, great question. And thank you to whoever has submitted that, because I think this is a great opportunity to really hone in on what I think is one of the most used and abused terms out there, fair use. So first things first, let's kind of get the elephant in the room out of the way, or however you say the expression, but let's just lay it out. Fair use, unfortunately, has become very, very subjective. Less objective and more subjective. And that's a very alarming statement to make, because the fair use doctrine is spelled out in black and white in the Copyright Act of 1976, lays out the prongs of what qualifies as non-infringement, or at least in the eyes of the law, fair use has been deemed as an affirmative defense against copyright infringement. So I want to get that out of the way, that sometimes there is no cookie cutter model with fair use. Sometimes it's going to be fact specific, and it will move the needle. Some circumstances will move the needle more in favor of the valid fair use defense. Other times it won't. Number two, I keep using the word defense, and it's because it is. When you have to argue fair use, it's because you're already being accused of copyright infringement. But the language of the Copyright Act of 1976 does say that your use of someone else's copyrighted work, so long as the fair use factors are satisfied, is not an infringement of copyright. So the statutory language does seem to conflict with case law, but either way, the only way that you're bringing up a fair use argument is because you've been accused of committing copyright infringement. So I don't want people to think that putting in their video description, fair use applies, and then a citation to the fair use doctrine is like the catch-all. It's like, saying the word Shazam and you've protected yourself. Insert TikTok sound. That's not how it goes. That is not how it goes. And I think that amplifies all the more how fair use has become truly one of the more used and abused terms in the context of intellectual property. Right. Now, with that said, any fair use defense will only hold weight if you're using someone else's copyrighted work for criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. And like I tell my students, if you're not using it for criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, do not pass go, do not collect $200. It's like the classic game, the community chest card from Monopoly. There is no world where you can raise a valid fair use defense if you're not using it for any of those enumerated purposes. Is it parody? Parody is a type of criticism. Think to yourself, am I criticizing something? This is a form of commentary. Are you commenting on it? That's where you have to really thoughtfully and just spend time thinking and rationalizing, am I using it for any of those reasons? Now, if let's say you did a fan edit, but it was preceded or is complemented with some commentary that you are providing, then you're in fair use territory. But that's really where the race just gets started. It doesn't end there. Now you have to look at the four factors of the fair use doctrine, which look at the purpose and character of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount of substantiality of your use of the copyrighted work in proportion to the copyrighted work as a whole. Basically, that prong says how much of the copyrighted material are you using in proportion to the entirety of it. And then the last one is the effect on the market. Basically, looks at if your use of someone else's copyrighted work could cause some type of harm, or maybe even a benefit. That could also be part of the discussion as well. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, though, I want to highlight the first prong, the purpose and character of the use. That prong will assess whether or not you are using it for criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. But that will also assess how transformative your use of someone else's copyrighted work is. So that's where the transformative fair use term came about. Transformative fair use is not different from fair use. transformative fair use is a subcategory under the fair use doctrine. It's under prong number 1. And transformative fair use, as defined by our courts, lays out that you can use someone else's copyrighted work so long as you have transformed it in such a way that it has new expression, meaning, or message. So if you took, let's say, a film clip from The Godfather and you modified it where, let's say, you changed the color tone and maybe you had like maybe a lo-fi beat over it, and you did maybe like a montage of clips of Michael Corleone from, when he was first getting started in the family to ultimately when he became the head of the Corleone family, it became the new Don. That's great. If you transformed it where you're showing little bits of it, great. You've maybe satisfied transformative fair use because maybe you've done something to really showcase his evolution as a character throughout the Godfather film. But now the next question is, you've transformed it, but is it a criticism or commentary? And what exactly are you commenting on? And I think that sometimes people think that maybe the edits themselves are the commentary. Again, fair use is a very subjective argument. It's not objective in any way, shape, or form. So one person could think that, but a judge or a trier of fact may think something contrary to that.
Right.
So all that to say, from what it sounds like, from what I've seen with a lot of fan edits, more times than not, it does have the transformative quality, but I wouldn't stretch my neck to say, oh my God, it satisfies fair use. Yeah. Personally, to me, I think fair use has to be directly commented on or directly criticized in some way. That's where you have a much more robust argument for fair use. But at the end of the day, fan edits like that, it's a weird, murky territory. But I'm leaning personally, from my own expertise, I'm leaning towards saying it doesn't really fit the mold of fair use.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's say they want to dive a little bit deeper into this and they do want to critique it or comment on a little bit. Does this have to be within the context of that video, or could that be independent and linked inside of the caption? Does it have to be contained, or can it be attached?
So I think that any type of commentary would work here. So if it's within the context of the video itself, that's great. Even if it were in the caption, that helps certainly as well. And I think that would actually serve as a nice supplement to it. Okay. That said, again, we're in the same vicious cycle here where sometimes it's a matter of whether or not a trier of fact is going to view the caption as the commentary or not. And that's just a matter of, which judge do you have and what do they have for breakfast? So, unfortunately, that's how it goes in the justice system. So I would say that those are all going to be a lot of relevant factors. But remember, you could have the strongest setup for criticism or commentary or any type of other, permitted reason to use someone else's copyrighted work under the fair use doctrine. But if you don't have a good, strong satisfaction of one or all of the 4 factors of the fair use doctrine, that's going to affect how the needle moves, even in favor of for or against fair use. That's going to be quite relevant. It's not going to be like a guarantee. Oh, it's for criticism, I'm definitely going to get a fair use protection here. That's not even a solid guarantee there. And remember, in fair use, not one factor is dispositive of the other. You do not need to satisfy all 4 factors of the fair use doctrine in order to succeed. It's just a matter of, again, how persuasive is the evidence that's going to show some solid argument for or against fair use. And it's up to a trier of fact to make that decision.
So if you are jumping to the world of creating fan edits or using somebody else's content and then creating your own edits with it, you best make sure you are checking with your lawyer before you do it, because they can give you better guidance than you just guessing on what will or will not work for you, and make sure you're a little more protected than guessing as you go. If you have further questions on this, go ahead and drop it down below, or anything similar to this. We would love to get these answered for you. Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes, so we're always willing to help you out and keep you legally protected inside of the legal entrepreneur space. Now is the time to let us know. But as always, if you want to go directly to the source, you can reach out to Tony on his social medias. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor, and you could check out my entertainment law podcast called End Scene, releases every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you have questions to keep you legally protected in the entrepreneur space, drop those down below. Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes, and we have daily videos dropping to help you navigate the world of social media so you can spend less time and effort creating your content, but make more profit from it while building up your community in just 5 minutes a day. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.